Princess stood before the mirror in her temporary quarters aboard Nexus Station. Her crystalline skin caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the metal walls. Today was her wedding day, but she felt no joy. She was about to marry a creature she had never met, from a species most people considered little better than smart animals. They had been fighting the Empire for 300 years. Her people were dying. Their beautiful crystal cities lay in ruins on a dozen worlds. The Council of Elders had tried everything: better weapons, stronger shields, even peace talks. Nothing worked. The only understood strength, and they were losing their strength with every battle. Then the humans came. They arrived 50 years ago in ugly metal ships that barely worked. Most species laughed at them. The humans had no psychic powers. They could not sing to crystals or bend light with their minds. They were just mammals who had learned to travel between stars, but they offered help, and they were desperate enough to listen. The deal was simple. Princess would marry a human military leader. In return, the humans would share their technology and fight alongside the against the. It seemed like a small price for salvation. Was the youngest of 7 princesses. Her marriage would not affect the royal succession. She could do this one thing for her people. A soft chime announced someone at her door. "Enter," she called in the trade language most species used. An elderly advisor stepped inside. His name was En, and he had served the royal family for 2 centuries. His usual calm expression looked troubled. "Princess, the human delegation has arrived. Are you ready?" Touched the wedding crown on her head. It was made from living crystal that sang softly when she moved. "As ready as I can be. Tell me again about this human I am to marry." And pulled out a data pad. "Commander, age 35 in human years. He leads something they call a Special Operations Unit. The humans say he is their finest military mind." "What does he look like?" "Small by our standards, about 2 meters tall. Brown hair, dark eyes. The humans sent images, but they all look the same to me." Nodded. She had seen the pictures. The human looked ordinary, even weak. His skin was not crystal or scale or shell, just soft pink flesh. How could such a creature help win a war against the mighty? "Princess," and said carefully, "you know this marriage is only for politics. You need not. That is, the humans understand this is about the alliance, not personal feelings." "I understand," turned from the mirror. "But if I am to be his wife, I should try to know him. Our people's survival may depend on keeping the humans happy." They walked through the station corridors toward the ceremony hall. Nexus Station was neutral territory, built by the ancient race as a place for different species to meet safely. The walls were covered in symbols from 100 worlds. Today, those walls would witness something that had never happened before: a marriage between royalty and a human. The ceremony hall was already full. Nobles sat on one side, their crystal bodies creating a rainbow of light. On the other side sat the human delegation. They wore simple black uniforms and looked uncomfortable in the formal setting. Between them sat representatives from other species who had come to witness this historic moment. At the front of the hall, a priest waited. The ancient creature looked like a walking tree, with bark skin and leaves for hair. They were known for being neutral in all conflicts, which made them perfect for performing mixed-species ceremonies. Then saw her future husband. Stood beside the priest, looking exactly like his pictures. He was smaller than she expected, barely reaching her shoulder. His dark uniform was clean but plain. Nothing about him suggested great power or skill. He looked like any human worker she might see on the station. But when their eyes met across the hall, felt something strange. She tried to read his emotions with her psychic abilities, as she did with all people. Usually, alien minds were easy to sense. Fear, anger, hope, sadness. All feelings had a particular shape that her kind could recognize. From the human, she felt nothing. It was not that he had no emotions. There was something there, but it was like trying to see through thick metal. Her psychic touch simply slid away without finding purchase. In 3 centuries of life, she had never met a mind she could not read at all. Smiled when he saw her approach. It seemed genuine, but she could not tell for sure without her abilities. He spoke in perfect, his accent so good he might have been born on her world. "Princess, I am honored to meet you." She blinked in surprise. "You speak our language well, Commander." "I have been studying for 2 years since the alliance talks began. Your culture fascinates me." The priest raised his branch-like arms for silence. "We gather today to witness a union that will bind 2 species in friendship and mutual aid. This marriage represents hope for peace in our troubled galaxy." The ceremony followed ancient traditions mixed with human customs. They exchanged rings made of crystal and metal. They spoke vows of partnership and respect. Through it all, remained calm and respectful. He knew exactly when to speak, when to bow, when to touch her hands in the traditional way. Most aliens found customs confusing. The crystal singing, the light patterns of formal communication, the precise movements that showed respect, it took most people years to learn. Performed everything perfectly. When the priest declared them married, the crowd applauded politely, looked at her new husband, and wondered what kind of man could master her culture so completely in just 2 years. More importantly, what kind of mind could hide itself so well from psychic observation? As they left the ceremony hall together, walked beside her quietly. He seemed content to let her set the pace and direction. Other species males were often loud and demanding. This one appeared gentle, almost thoughtful. "Commander," she said as they reached the reception area, "may I ask you something?" "Of course, and please call me, we are married now." "Why did your people choose you for this mission? You seem—" She searched for polite words. "Ordinary," smiled. "Unremarkable, not what you expected from Earth's finest military mind." His directness surprised her. "Yes." Picked up a drink from a passing server and sipped it carefully. "Perhaps that is exactly why they chose me, Princess. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the one nobody sees coming." Something in his voice made look at him more carefully. For just a moment, she thought she saw something behind his calm expression, something that made her glad he was on her side. But when she tried to probe deeper with her psychic abilities, she found only that same impenetrable wall. Remained a mystery, and was beginning to think that might be the point. 3 weeks after the wedding, was still trying to understand her husband. They lived together in the royal palace on Prime, sharing quarters but little else. Was polite and respectful, but he remained as mysterious as the day they met. Every morning, he woke before dawn and spent an hour doing strange exercises. Watched from their bedroom window as he moved through forms that looked like dancing, but felt like something else. His movements were precise and flowing, but there was violence hidden in them. She could see it even if she could not read his mind. Learned things too quickly. The crystal technology that powered their civilization took most aliens decades to understand. Her husband mastered it in days. He studied their star maps and knew the locations of every world within a week. He read their military reports and understood battle tactics that had taken their generals centuries to develop. "How do you learn so fast?" she asked him one evening as they shared dinner on their private balcony. Set down his crystal-eating rod, another thing he had learned perfectly in just hours. "Humans are good at adaptation, Princess. We had to be. Our world was not kind to us." "What do you mean?" "Earth has more deadly creatures than most worlds. Poison plants, hunting animals, whether that can kill. We survived by learning quickly or dying young." He looked out at the crystal spires of the city. "Your people grew up in paradise. You had time to develop art, music, psychic abilities. We had time to learn how to kill or be killed." Felt a chill. "You make your species sound like monsters." "Not monsters, survivors," smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "There is a difference, though I understand it may be hard to see." The next day brought the monthly state dinner. Representatives from allied worlds gathered in the Great Hall to discuss trade and mutual defense. Wore her finest robes and the crown of stars. Wore his dress uniform, simple compared to the elaborate outfits around him. The evening started normally. Ambassadors made polite conversation about trade routes and cultural exchanges. The nobles showed off their latest crystal art. Everyone pretended the war was going better than it really was. Was talking to the ambassador when the lights flickered. For a moment, the great hall's crystal illumination dimmed. When it returned to full brightness, she felt something wrong in the air. Was suddenly at her side. She had not seen him move from across the room, but he was there, his hand gently touching her arm. "Princess," he said quietly, "we need to step away from the windows." "Why?" Before he could answer, the first assassin appeared. The warrior materialized from nothing, his cloaking device failing as he raised his energy weapon. He was 2.5 meters tall, covered in natural armor, with 4 arms that could tear through steel. His weapon could punch through the walls of the palace. The guards reached for their crystal swords, but they were too far away. The ambassador screamed. Nobles scattered in panic, their formal robes making them clumsy. Moved. Had never seen anything like it. Her husband flowed across the room like water, but with purpose that was terrifying. He grabbed a crystal serving tray and spun it through the air. The heavy disc caught the warrior in the throat with a wet sound. Before the first assassin fell, was already dealing with the second. Another cloaked figure appeared near the main doors, but was there too. He used a dinner knife, just a simple eating tool, to find the gaps in the warrior's armor. The massive dropped without firing a shot. A third assassin appeared on the upper balcony, then a fourth near the side entrance. Seemed to know where they would be before they uncloaked. He moved between them like he was dancing, but every step ended with an enemy on the ground. Watched in shock as her quiet, ordinary husband systematically destroyed 6 assassins using nothing but items from the dinner table. A fork became a weapon. A chair became a shield. Even the decorative flowers were turned into tools of war. When it was over, the great hall was silent except for the sound of breathing. He stood in the center of the room, surrounded by bodies, his uniform barely wrinkled. In his hand was a crystal wine glass, unbroken despite everything that had happened. "Is anyone hurt?" he asked calmly. The guards finally arrived, their crystal weapons ready but useless. The battle was already over. They looked at the dead assassins, then at each other with confusion. "How did you know they were there?" asked. "Our sensors detected nothing." Set down the wine glass carefully. "I could hear them. Cloaking devices hide you from sight and most sensors, but they still move air. They still make sound when they breathe. They still leave heat traces if you know how to look." But they were invisible. "To your eyes, yes. But humans learned to hunt before we had good eyes. We used our ears, our noses, our sense of touch. We felt changes in air pressure and temperature. These skills do not go away just because we have better technology now." The captain of the palace guard stepped forward. He was an old soldier named who had fought for 2 centuries. "Commander, with respect, those were elite warriors. Assassins trained from birth. They have killed dozens of our best soldiers." Nodded politely. "I am sure they were very skilled in normal combat, but they expected to fight. They did not expect to fight a human." "What is the difference?" Looked around the room at the staring faces. "Fight with honor. You have rules, traditions, proper forms. You announce your attacks and face your enemies directly. It is beautiful and noble." He paused. "Humans learned to fight when honor was a luxury we could not afford. We fight to win, using whatever works. If that means using a dinner fork to kill a warrior, then that is what we do." Later that night, sat in her private study, reviewing the security recordings. She watched the attack again and again, trying to understand what she had seen. moved like he could see the future, always in the right place at the right moment. Found her there hours later, still staring at the screen. "You look troubled, Princess." "I am trying to understand you." She turned to face him. "Those assassins should have killed everyone in that room. Instead, you defeated them easily. How?" Sat down across from her. "May I show you something?" He pulled out a small device and activated a holographic display. It showed the palace's floor plan, marked with heat signatures, air currents, and sound patterns. While everyone was talking at dinner, I was listening to the building. I heard the ventilation system change when extra bodies entered through hidden passages. I felt the air temperature shift when cloaking devices activated. I smelled the particular alloy they use in their weapons. Stared at the display. You knew they were coming. I suspected something was wrong, yes, so I prepared. Prepared how? I identified every object in the room that could be used as a weapon. I calculated the best movement paths to reach each potential enemy position. I planned for multiple scenarios. Smiled slightly. Humans call it tactical awareness. We learn it because our lives often depend on it. But you seemed so calm during dinner. You showed no signs of suspicion. Why would I? Alerting the enemies that I knew they were there would only make them change their plans. Better to let them think they had surprise while I prepared to take it away from them. Felt something cold in her stomach. You used us as bait. You let them get close so you could study their attack. I used the situation to maximize our chances of survival, yes. If I had raised an alarm, they would have retreated and tried again later with a different plan. This way, the threat is ended. What if you had been wrong? What if you could not defeat them? Was quiet for a long moment. Then we would have died together, Princess, but I was not wrong. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Realized she was looking at something her people had never encountered before, a mind trained from birth to turn any situation into an advantage. Was not just a soldier. He was a weapon that thought. For the first time since their marriage, she wondered if they had made a deal with something more dangerous than they were trying to defeat. The news came at dawn, 3 months after the assassination attempt. Woke to find already dressed, standing by their window and looking up at the sky. His face was calm, but she had learned to read his stillness. When was completely motionless, it meant he was thinking about violence. "What is it?" she asked. "They have attacked 7. He turned to face her. "The colony is gone." Felt the words hit her like ice water. 7 was home to 12 million people. It was one of their worlds where young families went to start fresh lives. Gone? What do you mean gone? "I mean the planet is dead. They used something new. Their ships tore holes in reality itself. The colony's shields, their defensive fleets, the orbital stations, everything was destroyed in minutes." Activated a holographic display. The images made sick. Where 7 had been, there was now only twisted metal and burning atmosphere. The beautiful crystal cities were melted slag. The orbital gardens where children played were scattered debris. "How many escaped?" "None." His voice was flat, emotionless. "The attack was too fast. They wanted to send a message." Sank into a chair, her crystal skin dimming with grief. 12 million people, families she had met during royal visits, children who had sung for her with their young voices, all dead. "The council is meeting within the hour," said. "War Marshal has declared your marriage to be an insult to warrior honor. He says they will not negotiate with people who hide behind human weaklings." Weaklings, despite her grief, felt angry. After what you did to his assassins. He cannot admit that a human defeated his best warriors, so he calls it luck and claims the real test will come in space combat. Pulled on his uniform jacket. He may be right. What I did in the palace was small scale. This will be different. The emergency session of the High Council was chaos. Nobles filled the crystal amphitheater, their voices echoing off the walls in a dozen languages. Fear and anger mixed in the air until it was hard to breathe. High Counselor and called for order, but it took several minutes for the crowd to quiet down. When they did, he activated the main display showing the current military situation. Red markers showed forces. Blue showed defenses. There was far too much red. The enemy has 23 fleets moving toward our core worlds, and announced. They will reach Prime in 6 days. Our defensive fleets are moving to intercept, but, he paused, the new weapons they used on 7 can break through any shields we have. General N, the old warrior from the palace, stood up. What about the human fleet? Their ships are supposed to help defend us. The human fleet consists of 12 ships, and said quietly, 12 ships against 800 vessels. The council erupted in angry voices. Some blamed the marriage alliance. Others demanded immediate evacuation. A few suggested surrendering to save whatever lives they could. Sat silently through it all, watching and listening. Noticed he was not taking notes or recording anything. He was just absorbing information like a crystal soaks up light. When the shouting died down and looked toward the human section, Commander, do your people have any suggestions, any strategies that might help? Stood up slowly. May I see the detailed fleet positions? The display changed to show every ship on both sides. The formation was massive and organized. Dreadnoughts at the center, surrounded by battle cruisers and fighters. It looked like a moving city of weapons. They are coming straight at you, said. No deception, no complex maneuvers. They believe their new weapons make them invincible, so they see no need for subtlety. Can your ships make a difference? General N asked. Not in direct combat. Your crystal vessels are more advanced than ours in most ways. If you cannot stop them, we certainly cannot. Studied the display for another moment. But there may be another way. What way? And leaned forward. I would need to take one of the new hybrid ships, the Persistence. It combines human and technology in ways that might be useful. One ship, General N laughed bitterly. Commander, with respect, you are talking about facing the largest fleet ever assembled. One ship cannot make a difference. Turn to look at the general. That depends on what the ship is trying to accomplish. What do you mean? Your fleets are planning to fight directly. Ship against ship, weapons against weapons. It is honorable, but you will lose because they are stronger. Then what do you suggest? Was quiet for a long moment. I suggest that honor is a luxury you cannot afford right now. If you want to save your people, you need to fight like humans fight. Which is how? Dirty. The word hung in the air like poison. Several council members made sounds of disgust. The prized clean, honorable combat above all else. Fighting dirty was against everything they believed. You want us to abandon our principles? And asked. I want you to live. Looked around the chamber. Principles are wonderful when you have the strength to maintain them, but dead people have no principles at all. Watched her husband address the council and realized something frightening. Was not trying to convince them to fight differently. He was telling them what he planned to do with or without their permission. What exactly are you proposing, Commander? She asked. Turned to her with a small smile. I am going to take the Persistence and teach the why humans survived when stronger species did not. How? By showing them that sometimes the weakest creature in the forest is the most dangerous. Later that day, found in the shipyards inspecting the Persistence. The vessel was ugly compared to ships. Where theirs were smooth crystal and flowing lines, it was all angles and armor plating. But she could see human thinking in its design. Every system had backups. Every weakness was protected. You are really going to face their entire fleet alone? She asked. Not alone, you are coming with me. Blinked, I am not a soldier. No, but you are royalty. If I succeed, your people need to see that we did it together. If I fail, shrugged, then it will not matter who was aboard. There are 800 enemy ships. Even if you are the greatest warrior who ever lived, the numbers are impossible. Ran his hand along the ship's hull. Numbers only matter if you fight the kind of battle your enemy expects. They are expecting a glorious fleet engagement. Thousands of ships firing at each other until one side breaks. That is how space battles are fought. That is how space battles have been fought. But humans learned long ago that the best way to win a fight is to make sure it is not the fight your enemy prepared for. Looked at her seriously. Princess, your people are about to see something no other species has ever witnessed. They are going to see what humans do when we stop pretending to be civilized. That night, as they prepared to leave Prime, lay awake thinking about her husband's words. She had seen him fight 6 assassins and make it look easy. But this was different. This was war on a scale that could decide the fate of entire civilizations. Slept peacefully beside her, as if facing impossible odds was nothing unusual. Maybe for humans, she thought, it was not unusual. Maybe this was what her species had really married into, not just an alliance with another people, but a partnership with evolution's most successful predators. Tomorrow, she would find out if that was enough to save her world. The Persistence dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and saw hell spread out before them. The fleet filled the space between the outer planets like a metal plague. 847 ships, according to their sensors. The massive dreadnought sat at the center, big enough to crack moons. "Dear ancestors," she whispered. Sat calmly at the pilot station, studying the display. "It is actually smaller than I expected." Smaller, stared at him. That fleet could destroy 100 worlds. If those worlds fought them the way they expect to be fought, began inputting commands. But we are not going to do that. The communication system crackled to life. A massive face appeared on the screen, covered in battle scars and ritual tattoos. This was War Marshal himself, leader of the largest military force in the galaxy. "I am War Marshal of the Empire. You will identify yourself and surrender immediately." Leaned back in his chair. "I am Commander of Earth, married to Princess of the... We are here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Blinked, then threw back his head and roared with laughter. "You, one tiny ship against my grand fleet. Human, your species' reputation for insanity is well deserved." "Insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results," said quietly. "Your people have been fighting the same way for 1,000 years. Perhaps it is time to try something new. The only thing new will be how quickly I destroy you. All ships prepare to." Cut the communication and immediately pushed the ship into a dive toward the asteroid belt that ringed the system. "Hold on, Princess. This is going to be interesting." What happened next changed his understanding of what war could be. Did not attack the fleet. Instead, he flew straight into the asteroids and vanished from sensors. The followed 800 massive ships chasing one small vessel through a maze of spinning rocks. "They will trap us in here," said as asteroids crashed against their shields. "No, they will trap themselves." Flew the Persistence through gaps that seemed impossible. Spaces too small for normal ships, paths that curved and twisted like the tunnels of some giant creature. Behind them, the ships followed in formation, trying to maintain their disciplined order. Then began using the asteroids as weapons. He fired precise shots at key rocks, sending them tumbling into the paths of pursuing ships. A heavy cruiser tried to avoid a spinning asteroid and crashed into 2 more. A squadron of fighters followed the Persistence around a large rock and found themselves flying straight into a debris field that had created seconds earlier. "How are you doing this?" asked as another enemy ship exploded behind them. "I am not fighting their ships, I am fighting their thinking." Spun them between 2 asteroids that were so close together they scraped the hull. Fight in formation. They stay together, support each other, follow orders. It makes them strong in open space. But not here. In here, Formation is a weakness. They cannot support each other when every ship is trying not to crash. They cannot follow complex orders when they are focused on survival. Was right. The perfect formation was breaking apart as ships struggled to navigate the asteroid field. Some collided with rocks. Others crashed into each other trying to avoid obstacles. The mighty fleet that had destroyed 7 was tearing itself apart. But War Marshal was not stupid. He ordered his fleet to pull back and surround the asteroid field. If they could not follow the human inside, they would wait for him to come out. Smiled when he saw the new formation on sensors. Perfect. Now they are exactly where I want them. What do you mean? Instead of answering, flew the Persistence deeper into the asteroids, toward the belt's center where the rocks were largest and most dangerous. He found what he was looking for, a massive asteroid nearly the size of a moon, spinning slowly through space. Princess, are you familiar with orbital mechanics? Basic principles, yes. Then you understand that everything in this system moves in predictable patterns. Orbits, rotations, gravitational effects, mathematics that can be calculated precisely. Began attaching small devices to the asteroid's surface. Realized they were mining charges, tools normally used to break up rocks for easier harvesting. What are you doing? Creating a gravitational cascade. He finished placing the charges and flew back to a safe distance. When I detonate these charges at precisely the right moment, this asteroid will break apart and its pieces will hit other asteroids. Those impacts will send more rocks flying. The chain reaction will spread through the entire belt. That sounds dangerous. Very dangerous. The gravitational disruption will send billions of tons of rock flying in all directions at tremendous speed. Checked his calculations one more time. Some of those rocks will be thrown directly at the fleet. Understood. You are turning the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. Exactly, but timing is everything. The ships have to be in precisely the right positions when the cascade begins. Flew the Persistence back toward the fleet's edge, letting himself be seen on their sensors. As he expected, War Marshal ordered an immediate attack. Hundreds of ships moved into the outer asteroid belt, trying to corner the small human vessel. When they were exactly where needed them to be, he triggered the charges. The effect was beyond anything had imagined. The massive asteroid exploded into pieces, each piece as big as a starship. Those pieces crashed into other asteroids, which broke apart and hit more rocks. Within minutes, the entire belt was a storm of flying debris. The ships found themselves caught in a hurricane of stone and metal. Their shields flared and failed as house-sized rocks smashed into hulls designed to fight other ships, not natural disasters. Even their mighty dreadnought was battered by impacts that no weapon could match. But was not finished. While the fleet struggled with the asteroid storm, he flew the Persistence straight toward The massive ship was the size of a city, bristling with enough weapons to destroy planets. Its shields were down, damaged by asteroid impacts, but it still had thousands of crew members and enough firepower to vaporize 100 ships. What are you doing now? Something humans learned from a very old story. Sometimes the best way to kill a giant is from the inside. He activated a stolen beacon taken from one of the dead assassins 3 months earlier. To the sensors, the Persistence looked like a damaged ship requesting emergency docking. The giant ship's docking bay opened and flew inside. What happened next was not a battle. It was a demonstration of why humans had survived on a world that tried to kill them every day for millions of years. Moved through like a virus through a body. He did not fight the crew directly. Instead, he turned the ship's own systems against it. Emergency bulkheads that were meant to contain damage became traps. Life support systems became weapons. Navigation computers became tools of destruction. Within an hour, the pride of the Empire was tearing itself apart. Crew members fought each other in the corridors, convinced they were under attack by invaders who were everywhere and nowhere. Systems failed in cascade patterns as used his understanding of their psychology against them. The exploded from within, taking War Marshal and his command staff with it. From the observation deck of the Persistence, now safely away from the dying ship, watched the fleet fall apart. Without their flagship and commander, individual ships began breaking formation. Some tried to continue the attack, but they were scattered and confused. Others attempted to retreat but flew into the still-active asteroid storm. In 6 hours, one human had reduced the galaxy's most feared military force to scattered wreckage and fleeing survivors. How was all could say. Sat down heavily, suddenly looking tired. Humans do not fight fair, Princess. We fight to win. We use whatever works, the environment, the enemy's psychology, their own strengths turned into weaknesses. But they were so much stronger than us. Strength is not everything. A virus is smaller than any creature it kills, but it wins by using the host's own body against it. Looked out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable fleet. I did not defeat 800 ships. I convinced them to defeat themselves. Stared at her husband with new understanding. She had thought she was marrying an ordinary human to secure an alliance. Instead, she had married a weapon that thought, planned, and adapted like no other creature in the galaxy. The question now was whether that weapon could ever be turned off. The silence after the battle was louder than the explosions had been. Stood on the bridge of the Persistence, looking out at a debris field that stretched across half the system. Twisted metal and crystal floated where the most powerful fleet in the galaxy had been just hours before. The surviving ships are requesting permission to surrender, said quietly. He was monitoring dozens of communication channels, his face lit by the soft glow of the displays. Their remaining commanders want to discuss terms. Turned to look at him. Her husband sat at his station as calmly as if he had just finished routine maintenance, not destroyed an entire civilization's military might. What will you tell them? That is not my decision to make. I am just a weapon, Princess. Someone else must decide how to use the victory. The communication system activated, showing the face of High Counselor on Prime. Behind him could see the entire High Council gathered in emergency session. Their crystalline features showed a mixture of relief, joy, and something that looked like fear. Princess, Commander, and said formally, the Council has been monitoring the battle through long-range sensors. We are having difficulty understanding what we observed. The fleet has been defeated, replied simply. Yes, but how? Our best military analysts cannot explain what happened. The tactical reports make no sense. Was quiet for a moment. Counselor, have you ever seen a human hunt? No, Commander. Humans do not run faster than their prey. We are not stronger or better armed than the animals we catch. But we are better at thinking several steps ahead. We predict where the prey will go and wait for them there. We use the environment as a weapon. Most importantly, we never give up. I still do not understand how one ship could. I did not fight 800 ships, interrupted gently. I fought one fleet that happened to have 800 components. I attacked their command structure, their formation discipline, their psychological need to maintain honor. Once those were broken, the individual ships became confused and vulnerable. General N's voice came over the communication channel. The old warrior's face showed respect mixed with unease. Commander, what you accomplished today was unprecedented. But I must ask, could your people do this again, if another enemy threatens us? Glanced at before answering. General, what you saw today was not special human technology or secret weapons. It was just one human thinking like a human. Yes, we could do this again. We could do much worse if we needed to. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Watched the council members look at each other with expressions she had never seen before. They were realizing the same thing she had. The alliance with humanity was not just a military partnership. It was an invitation to something that could reshape the galaxy. The survivors are transmitting on all frequencies, and said finally. They claim their empire formally surrenders and requests immediate peace negotiations. After one battle, asked. After seeing what humans are capable of, they do not want to fight a full war against Earth. Anne's voice carried a note of amazement. Princess, in 6 hours your husband has accomplished what our military could not do in 3 centuries. Stood up from his station. If you will excuse me, counselor, I need to check our systems and prepare for the journey home. As he walked away, Anne's voice dropped to a whisper. Princess, is your husband always so calm after something like this? Looked toward the corridor where had disappeared. I am beginning to think this is normal for him. Later, as they traveled back to Prime, found in the ship's small garden. The Persistence had been designed for long missions, so it included a space where crew members could grow plants and breathe natural air. Sat among the flowers, reading what looked like poetry on a small screen. How can you be so peaceful? She asked. 6 hours ago you destroyed the largest fleet in galactic history. Now you are reading poetry. Looked up with a slight smile. The battle is over, Princess. Staying in a fighting mindset when there is no fight serves no purpose. But what you did, she struggled for words. You killed hundreds of thousands of people today. Yes, his voice was steady without pride or regret. I killed them to protect millions more. That is what soldiers do. It does not bother you. Was quiet for a long moment, looking at the flowers around them. When I was young, I read stories about heroes who won battles without anyone dying, clean victories where enemies simply surrendered when they realized they could not win. He touched one of the flower petals gently. Those are beautiful stories, but they are fantasies. In the real universe, peace often requires violence. The only choice is who pays the price. Sat down across from him. Is that why humans became so good at war? Because you understood that choice? Partly, but mostly it is because we had no alternative. Earth taught us that the universe does not care about fairness or honor. It only cares about survival. We learned to survive by any means necessary. And now we use those skills to protect things we care about. Met her eyes. Your people are something we care about, Princess. The alliance is not just political convenience for us. Why? Because you represent something humans lost long ago, the ability to create beauty instead of destruction. Your cities, your art, your music, these are things worth protecting. Felt something shift in her understanding. You see yourself as guardians, not conquerors. Exactly. Humans learn to be monsters so that others do not have to, smiled sadly. It is not a noble calling, but it is a necessary one. The next few days brought a stream of visitors to Prime. Representatives from dozens of species came to see the princess who had married a human and the human who had destroyed the marriage that had been seen as desperation was now viewed as the most brilliant diplomatic move in galactic history. But notice something else in the visitors' eyes. Fear mixed with respect. They looked at the way people look at a sleeping volcano, grateful for its protection, but aware of its potential for destruction. They are afraid of us, she said to one evening as they watched the sunset from their balcony. They should be, replied matter-of-factly. Not because we want to hurt them, but because they now understand what humans are capable of when pushed too far. Is that good or bad? It is realistic. Fear can prevent wars just as effectively as friendship, sometimes more so. News came that the empire had formally dissolved itself. Without their military might, the various species within the empire declared independence. Several worlds requested protection from the human alliance, offering resources and loyalty in exchange for security. You have changed the entire balance of galactic power, told as they reviewed the requests. We have made it more honest, he corrected. Before, power belonged to those with the biggest fleets and the strongest weapons. Now it belongs to those who understand that true strength comes from protecting others, not conquering them. That night, lay awake thinking about her husband's words. 3 months ago, she had thought she was marrying a simple human to save her people. Now she understood she had married something far more complex, a representative of a species that had turned survival into an art form. Slept peacefully beside her, as he did every night. But now she knew what that peace represented. Not the absence of violence, but the confidence of someone who had mastered violence so completely that he no longer needed to think about it. For the first time since their wedding, tried to reach into his mind with her psychic abilities. As always, she found that strange wall, that impenetrable barrier that kept his thoughts hidden. But now she thought she understood what was behind it. It was not that had no emotions or thoughts she could read. It was that he contained too many. Behind his calm exterior lived the memories and instincts of every human who had ever fought to survive. Every lesson learned through pain, every adaptation bought with blood, every victory that came at a terrible price. Was not just one person. He was the living embodiment of humanity's 10,000-year journey from prey to predator. He carried within himself the accumulated wisdom of a species that had learned to thrive in a universe designed to kill them. And now, impossibly, that vast reservoir of survival knowledge was dedicated to protecting her people. Finally understood what the High Council had really accomplished with their desperate marriage alliance. They had not just gained a military partner. They had bound themselves to evolution's masterpiece, a species that had turned the art of war into a tool for creating peace. As she drifted off to sleep, wondered if the galaxy would ever be the same. She doubted it. Humans had arrived, and they had made it clear that the old rules no longer applied. From now on, peace would be enforced not by the strong, but by those who understood that true strength meant protecting the weak. It was, she thought, a much better universe.